Now in part one of the playing the blues, I mooted these notes as being a good place to start if we're in the key of A. So 5th fret, there's my A7 chord, and we had 5-7 and 5-7, with all of the little things that you could do with them, like sliding. Now that's kind of idiomatic sort of blues playing. And the second part, I mooted a more consonant approach to those notes which would go with this chord. Now I'm going to combine these two. Now, the idiomatic sort of blues sound, of course, is absolutely fine. It's great as well. And, you know, all the great blues players over the years have been playing like that. However, as I said in part one, the blues is kind of, as a genre, it's not really mainstream, but there are lots of people, lots of guitarists who are playing on today's records who have that sort of bluesy style, but combined with a sort of consonant approach to different chord sequences. So if I'm playing over A7, I've got two things that I could do. We could combine these to be scalic in their form. So if we've got A7, so this is just something that is now combining those two things. So if I play my blues riff, my sort of backing track back, the only trouble is with this is that these four notes work quite well by themselves over that A7. It's only when you combine them with the musically more consonant notes that that one suddenly stands out. So that note doesn't work so well. We could just avoid it, or we could use the note that is actually in that chord of A7, or we could do a bend. Now those semitone bends, where you're only bending a half step, they're not as common as the full tone bends. Doesn't mean you can't use them though. Now the aim of this is not to say play as many notes as possible, because it never is. There's no point in that. It just says I can play fast. It doesn't say anything about what the song's for. You're not playing for the vocalist. Indeed, if you are answering vocal lines, you've got to be a bit careful that you don't just spatter a load of stuff in between those lines. Woke up this morning, look round for my shoes. That's kind of what you're looking for, rather than woke up this morning. It's just sort of intense, and it doesn't really work for this sort of thing. Of course, works for some genres and some tempos as well. If I was to speed this up, you know, if it's at 90 at the moment, if I go to 140, there is a sort of a need to maintain the energy of that tempo, and indeed the lyrics might be different. Once I was singing, then it might warrant something. But if we're just working, well, even at that tempo, you can still keep things simple. Do little flurries if you think, oh yeah, you know, it's a musical means of expression, but, you know, keep them to a, you know, a respectable minimum, maybe. So I've only used, really, apart from that, I did something just now where I went onto the A and the E strings, but really I've based most of my stuff on the middle two strings still. But with those extra notes, you're actually creating a full scale. What do I mean by that? I mean a diatonic scale is one that has 7 notes in. So we've got A7, and we've got these notes here. And if I go up to there, I've completed the scale. That 1 octave. Now, over A7 though, I said that that note didn't work because it's in direct conflict with that C sharp, the third of the A7 chord. If I was to make that into a sharp and play the same scale, I've actually got technically a mixolydian on A. If I start it on E, I've got something called the Dorian mode, but we don't want to get too technical with this because there's no point. Having the sort of names of the scales in memory doesn't, it can really detract from the point of playing a guitar solo, which is to express, is to create musical expression and to have that human side to it. Too much maths and too much modes, this, that and the other, it doesn't. Sure, it's great for personal study, and it also can generate other things, other ideas, which are great. But when it comes to the crunch, if you're dealing with something like this, I'll just slow the tempo back down here to 80. It's really about playing notes tastefully. It's Duke Ellington, I think, said of Django Reinhardt that he is unable to play a note that is in poor taste. That's, I mean, Duke Ellington had a very, you know, had a reputation for paying sort of really sort of, you know, very carefully worded compliments. But that, for me, really is quite a nice one because, yes, Django Reinhardt could play fast. He could play at lightning, breakneck pace, but it was all considered. It was all thought about. So, repeating notes. Why not? Doesn't say you can't play the other notes, it means you're going to repeat that one because you're sort of on that vibe. Now, rhythmic aspects to solo, the simpler it is, the more in time it really should be. If you're playing lots of fast notes over a beat, you know. And that is another reason why people think, oh, I'll just, because they're not really locking into that rhythm so much. If I was to tap that out, that would be quite hard to actually delineate where all of those notes are in a rhythmic sense. And it kind of speaks volumes, really. I could tap that out quite easily. Why I'd want to tap my own solo out, I'm not sure. But I think I'm making the point that it's simply, if you can't chart something out effectively, why is it there in the first place, really? Or why would you? Why would you want to tab out a solo that's like that? It doesn't really make any sense. Now, I also showed the scale across all 6 strings, and in this position as well, where this position, 2nd fret to 5th fret, with your minor pentatonic would work over the 1st chord, and then other chords would work at the 5th fret position. You can combine the 2 positions in their entirety. So there's a huge variety of things going on there. I mean, what I just played there, of course, that would be a solo. That wouldn't go anywhere near a vocal line because it's just too much there. So there is also another way of playing this major pentatonic, or the minor pentatonic on the 2nd fret, which is what goes over your A7. Now this is where the relative majors and minors come into view. This scale is actually the F sharp minor pentatonic. So you think, oh, what's it doing over A major? The answer is one is a relative of the other. They're like cousins. They're like the Kaiser and Edward VII. You know, they're the kind of, you know, virtually the same. So you've got minor pentatonic on F sharp, or the major pentatonic on A. And that's what we're concerned with this first chord. So the major pentatonic on A actually starts on the 2nd note of your F sharp minor pentatonic. F sharp minor is this, which goes over that minor chord, or they're the same scale, they've got the same notes in, I just started in a different place. Now there is a way of also scaling the neck, because lots of guitarists go, oh, I want to do all this. I'm going to indulge you with that. So, the major pentatonic, which is that, can also be played like this. The difference being, you can keep going. You've got a bit more of a range there. So, 5, 7, slide to 9. Next string, 7, 9. Next string, 7, 9, slide to 11. Next string, 9, 11. Then you you shift up a fret, so your first finger actually appears now on 10th fret. 12, slide to 14, and then 12, 14, and then stretch to 17. So you end up on an A that's much, much higher than that one. It's actually 3 octaves. Let's see what happens with this. Then for your second chord, you'd be more on your that one. But with the relative majors and minors over D, if I'm using an A minor blues scale, that means I can use a major pentatonic on C. It's all going a little bit silly. Now, if I just speed this up so that you can hear what works over each chord, I'm going to go a bit faster than this. Let's try 150. That's quite fast. There's your A major. So that started at 8th fret. And this is a way of just being able to get to the top of the guitar with a run up. So yeah, 150 is just slightly daft. And I've undone all of my advice about playing things too fast by doing that. Sorry. Eighth. Fifth. Now the chord 5, we're just going to leave that because it's only one bar, and most of the notes that you've got for those 2 other chords will fit. There's not really any point in sort of going really full on that chord because it's only one bar. So the other thing you could do is you could actually go up the major pentatonic on A and go down the other one for the next chord. So you're not sort of having to start from the beginning. However, the taste and the sort of stylistic effect of this has all been lost because all I'm doing is going up and down a scale, and that's something you don't want to do. You don't want to just go... That's a technical exercise, it's not a guitar solo. Now, things like the slides, you can use those to your advantage to get that sort of gritty in both directions. There's masses you can do, but always be careful with how much you put in. If you listen to classic solos by Freddie King or B.B. King or Eric Clapton or Stevie Ray Vaughan, there's lots and lots of consideration and lots of gaps because you're punctuating whenever you play a solo. So lots and lots of things to consider. Now, I'm using GarageBand on iOS here. I've put up a few blues backing tracks on my channel. Not this one, although I might put it up. So do practice with this. In fact, I will put this up as a sort of like an epilogue, if you will, of this.